I'm Elizabeth and I like to sew smart. Today I thought I would show you how you can use up extra patches and squares that you've had when you've made an I Spy quilt or a patch quilt, and you can make it into a really nice cushion so that you have no waste at all. Here I have 4 6.5-inch squares that I had left from an I Spy quilt, and with the scraps that I have made a little template, and I have put Visifix on the back of the scrap, cut around the template to make a little jigsaw tongue which is going to go on the next square. So you will need to make 4 of those, making sure that you have the pattern going the same way on each square into the next one. So I've cut out my little tongues. I have removed the paper from the back and I've positioned them about halfway down the square, like so. Just take the paper off this one, and you'll see I've got that with the pattern running properly. So now you have a little jigsaw square, and I'm just now going to press those on with a nice warm iron. The next step is to join the top 2 squares together. Just pin them very lightly together, and the bottom 2 together, and using a 1/4 inch seam we're going to sew all the way down those raw edges. So I've got my 1/4 inch foot on, and I'm just going to sew and back stitch a little bit down the first seam of the top 2 squares. So this is the first one, top 2. So you see that's nicely caught into there. So I've sewn my top 2 together and my bottom 2, and now I'm going to sew the top to the bottom, and you'll see that I have pressed my seams open. There is a reason for that, which you will see very shortly. Here I have some fusible bias tape. This is 3/8 of an inch wide, and how we're going to define our jigsaw piece is I'm going to, with a nice warm iron, put it just over the pressed out seam. So we will just pop him on there. I'm going to iron it down to the edge of the tongue. When I get to the edge of the tongue, I'm going to fold it back very gently. I'll use my little tool to do that with. Crease it nicely in there, and I'm going to press it. Because it's bias, it will curve very nicely. I'm going to press it right around the shape of the tongue. I'm going to go all the way around, pulling the paper off as I go. All the way around. Just keep moving my work as I'm going. Right the way around. Bring it down again to the seam. Right to the seam. Give it another neat little fold. Right the way to the centre. And I'm going to carry on and go across to the next tongue, round there, and across to the left hand edge. So I've gone across from one edge to the other, and then I'm going to come down from the top and go around again, right down to the bottom, so that we have a really nice defined jigsaw piece. Now we've ironed our tape on all the way around, we're going to stitch it down. First we're going to stitch down on the right hand side to the join there, to the mitre, all the way around on the inside of the curve and on the right hand side right the way across, and then we're going to stitch on the other side of the tape, the left hand side of the tape, to secure it all the way around again. So coming down the right hand side, be very careful when you get to the mitre at the corner. Do it slowly, take your time, because it will take time. Now I've just come over the crease, so I'm actually going to turn it and just bring it out again and carry on. I just like that crease to be nicely secured. And now I'm going to bring it round again on the right hand side, all the way around, both sides, right to left, top to bottom. All 4 squares are now completed. You've got your tape sewn down really nicely, and your panel should now measure exactly 12.5 inches square. So take your 12.5 inch square ruler if you have it. I'm just going to trim off the excess little threads, smooth those away. And the next step is going to be to put on your first border. I have cut just plain black strips 2 inches wide. Now you know that you measured 12.5 inches on each side, so the first 2 strips of your border can be exactly 12.5 inches, and you're going to pin those on. Pin them with the right sides together, pin them on, and stitch using your 1/4 inch foot on the right hand side and on the left hand side too. So now I'm going to just stitch, as I said, using the 1/4 inch foot, just stitch all the way down. I'm doing it very slowly so that you can see it better. And I'm going to do it down the other side as well, and then I'm pressing my seams to the outer edge. So I've stitched on the right hand side and the left hand side, and the reason that I said you must press your seam to the outer edge is because when you open this and press this seam along here, when you opened it and pressed it flat, you were having a stitch line on the bias on each side which secures your seam. But this side now must be pressed to the outer edge because you're going to quilt eventually in the ditch where the join is there, so you will need not to have that open, that will stretch and give way. Now the second piece of border is the top and the bottom. This now measures 15.5 inches, so you're going to cut another piece of your 2 inch black border fabric to exactly 15.5 inches, cut it, and you're going to pin it and stitch it on the top and the bottom of your panel. So I've stitched the top and the bottom border piece on. Now that started out at 2 inches, and I've chosen for the next border a nice brightly coloured one to pick out all the colours in the centre panel, and I've cut that at 2.5 inches. And again, because I know my square measures 15.5 inches, I've cut the 2 side pieces exactly 15.5 inches, and then I'm going to press those seams to the outside edge, just do as we did before, measure the top and the bottom, and they will be the same of course, and then I'll pin and stitch them on just as I did the first one. So now you've finished your top, but you will have to cut it back to 19 inches square because that will take a good pillow insert. Now what you will do is take roughly about 1/8 inch off all the way around. Now because this is going to be used and you might take the insert out to wash or whatever, then what you need to do is to be sure that the back of your work is stable inside the cushion cover. So for that, I've got a piece of fabric here, which is sort of fabric like you would cover a pillow in, under pillow in, and a piece of fusible or iron-on pellin. Now, the sticky side of the pellin will go to the wrong side of this backing fabric. I'm going to iron that on and secure it, and then I'm going to actually just pull this out from here, place this, your top, onto that, and then I'm going to quilt around in the ditch to secure it, and it makes a really stable top and inside for the cushion cover. Now, to stitch in the ditch, which is the seam line that runs in between your two pieces, I have actually just stitched along here, but you can't see that stitch because there's a clever little device you can use with your walking foot. Your walking foot has a gap in the middle and two little lips on either side. If you line the centre seam up with that little lip on the right hand side there, it will stitch perfectly in that seam line there, and you won't get any stitches showing. So I've got it lined up and carefully stitching down, just lining that seam up all the time, and I'm using a slightly longer quilting stitch. And I'll just show you if I can turn this around. You have a perfect ditch stitch you cannot see. I have stitched in the ditch all the way around my square. You can, if you prefer, you can quilt a bit extra in the individual squares, or even do another line around your fusible bias, but I prefer just to go round that because it's quite stable, and I have actually just overlocked just to hold the edge, the raw edges in. You don't have to do that, but I prefer that to pinning. There are a couple of ways that you can actually put your backing onto your cushion cover. You will need to cut, your square now measures 19 inches exactly, so you'll need to cut whatever backing fabric you choose across the fabric 19 inches. So you have a whole piece across the fabric 19 inches wide, and what you're going to do is you're going to cut that exactly in half down the crease line to make your backing and your fastening. You can, if you prefer, I'm actually going to bind my cushion, but if you prefer not to bind, you can put your backing on with right sides together and just stitch around and overlock the edges so that you don't have to use any binding, but I prefer the binding. So we're going to just cut this now in half, which I will do. Just cut it on the crease line because it doesn't matter if the two sides are not quite identical. So we'll cut that. It means you have two pieces now, and you're going to fold each piece in half back to the selvage and press them. I'll take those to the iron now and press them. The method I'm going to use for the back, I'll demonstrate it on here first for you. This is just a 1.5 inch square pattern I've made a cushion cover from. Now I'll turn it over. This is a lovely fastening for the back because you can barely see it. It really fits snug and it fits really well. It's fastened with Velcro and it makes the cushion lovely and plump. And I'm going to use the same method on here. So you've got your two pieces that you have pressed. Raw edges go to the top. Make sure they fit nicely. They're well laid out on there. And one on the bottom. and you'll see that there's a really nice overlap with that. It works out perfectly right size. And I don't do anything other than sewing smart, so I haven't got black Velcro, I have white Velcro. So what I'm going to do is use a piece of white Velcro to fasten on the top, soft side, and on the bottom piece, the grip side. When they are stitched on, they will join and you won't see them, and they will leave a lovely finish. Then I'm going to pin all the way around the raw edges and stitch with a generous 1/4 inch stitch all the way around. So I've stitched all the way around. I stitched my Velcro on, as you can see. Stitched all the way around. So when you open up your cushion cover, you'll see that's the backing on the top of your cushion cover. Fits really nicely. Now I am actually going to bind with 2 strips of 2.5 inch fabric. That's what it takes to go all the way around, 2.5 inch strips, and I'm going to sew that on. If you weren't going to bind, you would obviously have the backing on this side and not on the other side. Now when I bind around here, if you're not sure how to bind, you can refer to my handy hints number 1 and 2, because they not only show you how to bind, they also give you 3 different ways of joining the tails on your binding to finish it off. So here we have our completed cushion cover with the pad inside. If you turn it over, there's your Velcro, nicely finished off. If you did want to make it look really dressy on the back, you could put 2 buttons just over the top of the Velcro and stitch it from underneath without the buttonholes. You won't need the buttonholes obviously, and that really is a nice way of finishing it off. And here you have one completed cushion made with your scraps from your I Spy quilt.